Hello everyone. In this video, we would be starting with the creation operators. So these are the list of operators which are given by the RxJS, which is used to create observables. So that is what creation operator means. It is used to create observables using these operators. From this list of operators, we would be starting with few of the operators which are widely used, and you would be seeing them in your day-to-day life. Let's see some examples. Over here, we are trying to use the from operator to create observable using an array of numbers. So what we see over here is that this array of numbers is the input to from, and it creates an observable which we see the values being emitted here. So it comes from this and we see the values over here. One thing to note here is that this complete function is getting triggered, which is being triggered from the from operator itself. So since it's a default operator, this observable is emitting that event. So next we would see how do we create observables from promises. So this is a promise. We're trying to call the JSON placeholder API, and fetch returns a promise, as we all know. So this is an input to the from operator, and what it returns is a promise itself, because fetch returns a promise, and then once we do .json to it, it returns the actual value. So that's what you see in the log. Let's go to the next way of how do we create or how do we use the from operator, which is iterable. So if you have an iterable in JavaScript, how do you use that to convert to an observable? So this is an iterator function, and this is a variable which is holding that. So what we do is we just pass that variable to the from operator. So at the end, what we see is, let's comment this. So yeah, so at the end, what we see is the same value up till 5. It would come. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the end, again, the complete is triggered. We see the console log. So let's go to the next one, which is how do we create an observable from an array-like object? What do you mean by array-like object? So this is an object which has keys which an array has. So if you might be knowing, actually array is an object. So with a length property. That's the only difference which makes an object an array. So if an object has a length property, it makes that an array. So it has these values as apple, banana, and cherry. So if you would have guessed, the output would be similar to this. Like, think of this as an array. So that's what you are seeing over here. Apple, banana, and cherry. That's what you get over here. That's what you get from this. And again, the complete method is being triggered. Next one is, how do we create observables from observable? So let's say we have an observable and we want to create another observable from it. For this to understand, I've created a scenario. Let me uncomment this. For that, let me comment this. And then uncomment this all. So what the scenario is that it has few methods, which is authenticate user. So this is basically to simulate how does a user log in. So what this method does is it returns an observable. To understand this, we have created a scenario. What this scenario would be doing is it would be simulating how does the user authentication works. So this is a method which is returning an observable, and what it does is it just returns a true or false, or basically a message. It could be an error too. So we would be seeing the error method over here. That's what you are seeing over here right now, authentication failed due to server, which is coming from here because they're saying subscriber.error. So let's try to understand the code, what's happening over here. So this is an observable, which is actually calling another method, which is a promise. Okay, and what exactly it is doing is that it is either resolving or rejecting. And there is a success criteria that if so, it's just a success rate that we're trying to simulate, that it's the 80%, that 80% of the times this login would be successful. So this function returns a promise, which over here it is using dot then, and then if response dot success, basically this one, if it is true, then it is doing subscriber dot next, or else it is saying subscriber dot error. Okay, then if all thing is good, then it says subscriber dot complete. Similarly to dot then, we have a dot catch. Why? Because we are rejecting over here. So to catch that, we are doing subscriber dot error and then subscriber dot complete. So let's see how does it go. So when we are doing, so here is the from operator. So the from operator input is this observable. So if I try to sum up, basically this is an observable which is using a promise. So we can keep aside this. We can think of this function as a Boolean function which gives us either 0 or 1. And then based on that 0 or 1, it does a dot next or dot error. Okay. So what we see is this observable is the input to the from operator. So what we're doing is creating an observable from another observable. Okay. And then what we see is that there are methods to next, error, and complete. So as I said, from itself returns error and complete. So when the internal observable returns an error, it gets cached over here. That's what we are seeing over here. Authentication failed due to server, which comes from this one. Okay, let me try to reload the page to see this time, maybe, yeah, see. So it comes here, it says logs, authentication successful, which is coming from here. And then since everything went well and we are doing subscriber.complete, so it comes to this and it says authentication log, attempt log. I'll be sharing this link in the description. Feel free to play around and understand this things more. Moving to the next one, which is async scheduler. So you might be seeing in this documentation that the first input is the inputs which we played around, like an array like object, promise, iterable, unobservable. But what's next? What's the next argument? That's a scheduler like, which we would be seeing in the upcoming videos. But for now, to understand, I've used a async scheduler, which comes from RxJS itself. So let me comment this part. So what I'm talking about is this async scheduler. It comes from RxJS. And how do we use it? Is this. So again, I have a normal array, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then what we are doing is we are passing the values as the first input and async scheduler that comes from RxJS as a second input. So it's a scheduler like. So what do we know about observer? Observables are synchronous. But this particular scheduler like argument, what it makes is it makes this async. So what do we see now is that this logs comes first. Observable creation using async scheduler. And then we see 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And at the end, we see the complete log. Let me remove this and see how does it go. So if I remove this, as we know, it is synchronous. So all these values would be emitted first. And then since it is completed, it would complete. And then we would see the log from it. So hope I'm clear with the from operator and we explored it well. If you still have any questions, feel free to ask in the comment section below. That's all for this video. See you in the next video. Happy coding.